Emma arrived at Hollow Hill, an old mansion inherited from a distant relative she never knew. Surrounded by a dense forest, the mansion looked abandoned and sinister. The sky was overcast, and a sense of unease washed over her as she approached the entrance. Emma pushed open the heavy wooden door, which groaned loudly. Inside, the mansion was dark and musty. Dust covered every surface, and cobwebs hung in the corners. An eerie silence filled the air, broken only by the distant sound of creaking floorboards. Emma stepped into the living room, where old furniture lay shrouded in white sheets. An old fireplace dominated one wall, with a large mirror above it. She saw a faint movement in the mirror, but when she turned around, the room was empty. The only sound was the faint ticking of an old clock. In the hallway, Emma found portraits of her ancestors. The eyes of the painted figures seemed to follow her. She felt a chill as she passed by a particularly stern-looking man. Suddenly, she heard a whisper, but when she turned around, no one was there. Emma discovered the mansion's library, filled with ancient books and old furniture. She found an old leather-bound journal on a desk. As she opened it, she read about dark rituals and mysterious deaths that plagued her family. The air grew colder, and she felt an unseen presence watching her. Emma noticed a hidden door behind a bookshelf. She hesitated, but pushed it open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down. The air was damp and cold. Holding her flashlight, she descended the stairs, the sound of her footsteps echoing in the silence. The basement was cold and damp, with strange symbols painted on the walls. An altar stood in the center, surrounded by melted candles and old, tattered books. As Emma approached the altar, she felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The symbols seemed to glow faintly, and she heard distant, echoing whispers. Emma's flashlight flickered and died, plunging her into darkness. The whispers grew louder, and she felt a cold hand brush against her arm. Panic set in as she fumbled to turn the flashlight back on. When it flickered back on, she saw a ghostly figure standing by the altar, staring at her with hollow eyes. Desperate to escape, Emma turned and ran up the stairs. The house seemed to come alive, with doors slamming and shadows moving around her. She reached the front door, threw it open, and ran into the stormy night, her heart pounding. She didn't stop until she reached her car. Breathing heavily, Emma glanced back at the mansion as she reached her car. In an upstairs window, she saw the ghostly figure watching her. The whispers faded, but the memory of that night would haunt her forever. She drove away, vowing never to return. In the outskirts of a small town stands an old, dilapidated house, its windows shattered, and its walls covered in ivy. 4 friends, Tom, Sarah, Emily, and Alex, decide to explore the abandoned house one evening. As they approach, the moon casts eerie shadows on the broken porch. With trepidation, the friends push open the creaking front door and step into the house's foyer. The air is musty, and dust motes dance in the beams of their flashlights. As they explore further, they feel a sense of unease settle over them, as if the house itself is watching their every move. Inside the house, they encounter rooms filled with decaying furniture and peeling wallpaper. Strange symbols are etched into the walls, and the temperature drops noticeably as they explore deeper. A feeling of dread washes over the group as they realize they are not alone in the house. As they delve further into the house, they begin to hear faint whispers that seem to echo through the halls. The whispers grow louder and more insistent, filling the air with an eerie chorus that sends shivers down their spines. Shadows dance on the walls, twisting and contorting in unnatural ways. Suddenly, a ghostly figure materializes before them, a translucent apparition with hollow eyes and outstretched hands. Its ethereal form hovers in the air, its movements slow and deliberate. Frozen with fear, the friends watch as the ghostly figure drifts closer, its presence filling the house with a chilling cold. With a collective cry, the friends turn and flee from the house, their hearts pounding with terror. They race through the dark corridors, their breath ragged and their footsteps echoing off the walls. Behind them, the ghostly figure follows, its unearthly wails echoing through the empty halls. Exhausted and trembling, the friends emerge from the house, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They vow never to speak of their night in the haunted house again, haunted by the shadows that lurk within its walls. But they know that some secrets are best left buried in the darkness.
On a chilly autumn evening, 4 friends, Emily, Jack, Olivia, and Michael, gather around a campfire near Willow Creek. They share ghost stories and dare each other to spend the night at the old abandoned house on the hill. Despite their fear, curiosity wins and they decide to go. The friends arrive at the old house, its silhouette looming against the night sky. The house is in disrepair, with broken windows and ivy creeping up the walls. Jack pushes open the rusty gate, and they walk up the overgrown path to the front door, which creaks loudly as they enter. Inside, the house is dark and cold. Cobwebs hang from the ceiling, and dust covers the furniture. They switch on their flashlights, revealing faded wallpaper and broken picture frames. As they step further inside, the front door slams shut behind them, making them jump. They enter the living room, where an old grand piano sits covered in dust. Emily notices a family portrait on the wall, the face is scratched out. Suddenly, the piano keys play a haunting tune on their own. The friends back away, their hearts pounding. They move to the kitchen where rusted appliances and broken dishes are scattered. The air is colder here. Olivia opens a cupboard and a pair of ghostly eyes stare back at her. She screams and the cupboard door slams shut on its own. The friends huddle together, terrified. They find a door leading to the basement. Michael suggests going down, but Emily hesitates. The others convince her, and they descend the creaky wooden stairs. The basement is pitch dark and damp. Their flashlights reveal old furniture and strange symbols on the walls. In the basement, they find an old table with a Ouija board. Suddenly, the planchette moves on its own, spelling out, "Leave now." A low growl echoes through the room, and they see a shadowy figure with glowing red eyes. Panicked, they rush back up the stairs, tripping over each other in their haste. Desperate to leave, they race towards the front door. The house seems to come alive, with doors slamming and ghostly wails echoing through the halls. They struggle to open the front door, finally breaking it open and escaping into the night. The house falls silent behind them. Outside, they collapse onto the grass, gasping for breath. The house looms dark and silent behind them. They vow never to return, each one haunted by the night's events. The night is cold, but they feel a sense of relief and safety as they walk away. Back at their homes, they try to return to normal life. But each night, they are haunted by nightmares of the glowing red eyes and the whispers in the dark. The memory of that night stays with them, a constant reminder of the terror they faced.
It was a dreary afternoon when Sarah, Tom, and their teenage daughter Lily arrived at Eldridge Manor. The old, sprawling mansion stood ominously against the darkening sky, its windows like blank eyes staring back at them. The family had inherited the property from a distant relative, and despite its eerie appearance, they decided to give it a chance. "Wow, this place is huge!" Lily exclaimed, though her excitement was tempered by an uneasy feeling. Tom forced a smile. "Let's make it our home. It just needs a little work." Sarah glanced at the towering structure, feeling a chill run down her spine. "Let's get inside before it gets too dark." Inside, the manor was filled with antique furniture, dusty chandeliers, and creaking wooden floors. As they explored, they discovered a hidden staircase behind an old bookcase. Curiosity got the better of them, and they descended into a dimly lit basement. "This place is like a maze," Tom said, his voice echoing off the walls. Sarah found an old diary on a dusty table. "Look at this," she said, flipping through the pages. "It's from the 1800s. Lily, shining a flashlight around the room, gasped as she saw strange symbols carved into the walls. "What do these mean?" That night, as they settled into their new home, strange things began to happen. Lily's room was the coldest in the house, and she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Around midnight, she heard whispering voices and saw a shadow moving in the corner of her room. "Mom! Dad!" she screamed, running to their room. Tom and Sarah woke up startled. "What is it, Lily?" Tom asked. "There's something in my room. I heard voices and saw a shadow," Lily said, trembling. Sarah tried to comfort her. "It's just your imagination, honey. This place is old and creepy, but there's nothing to be afraid of." The next day, Sarah delved deeper into the old diary. It belonged to a woman named Eleanor Eldridge, who wrote about the strange occurrences in the manor and her experiments with the occult. She mentioned a mirror in the attic that was the source of the hauntings. "We need to find that mirror," Sarah said, showing the diary to Tom. Tom nodded. Let's go to the attic. Together, they climbed the narrow staircase to the attic. Amidst the cobwebs and old trunks, they found the mirror, covered with a dusty cloth. "This must be it," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. As they uncovered the mirror, a cold breeze swept through the attic. The mirror's surface was strangely clear, and as they looked into it, they saw faint images of people moving behind them, ghostly figures trapped within the glass. Sarah gasped. "This is it. This is what's causing everything." Tom placed a hand on her shoulder. "We need to destroy it." But before they could act, the mirror began to glow, and the room filled with an unearthly light. The figures in the mirror became more distinct, reaching out towards them. "We need to get out of here," Tom shouted, pulling Sarah towards the stairs. That night, the hauntings intensified. Doors slammed shut on their own, footsteps echoed in empty hallways, and ghostly apparitions appeared throughout the house. The family realized they had to find a way to end the hauntings for good. "We need to perform a ritual," Sarah said, showing them a passage from the diary. "It's the only way to banish the spirits." Tom gathered the necessary items: candles, salt, and a ceremonial dagger. "Let's do this. We have no other choice." They set up the ritual in the basement, forming a circle with the salt and placing the mirror in the center. The family began the ritual, chanting the incantations from the diary. As they did, the temperature in the room dropped, and the ghostly figures from the mirror began to emerge, swirling around them. "Keep going," Sarah urged, her voice shaking. Tom held the dagger steady, ready for the final part of the ritual. "We're almost there." Lily, clutching her mother's hand, watched in terror as the spirits drew closer, their faces contorted with rage and sorrow. As Tom raised the dagger to complete the ritual, a powerful force knocked him to the ground. The mirror glowed brighter, and a deafening roar filled the room. "No, we can't stop now!" Sarah shouted, helping Tom up. With renewed determination, Tom plunged the dagger into the mirror. The glass shattered, releasing a blinding light and a wave of cold air that knocked them all back. The spirits screamed and dissipated, leaving the room in silence. The temperature began to rise, and the oppressive feeling lifted. "It's over," Tom said, breathing heavily. The next morning, the manor felt different. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and the oppressive atmosphere was gone. The family began packing their things, eager to leave the haunted house behind. "We did it," Lily said, smiling for the first time in days. Sarah nodded. "Let's never speak of this place again." Tom agreed. "We need to move on with our lives." As they drove away from Eldridge Manor, the weight of the past days lifted, and they felt hopeful for the future. Back home, life seemed to return to normal. However, one night, Sarah found a piece of the shattered mirror in her bag. She stared at it, her heart pounding. Suddenly, she heard a familiar whisper and saw a shadow move across the room. "Tom, it's not over," she whispered, feeling a chill run down her spine. As the shadow loomed larger, the whisper grew louder, and Sarah realized with horror that the spirits had followed them home. On a cold, moonlit night, 4 friends, Jake, Emily, Noah, and Lisa, stood at the gate of Blackwood Manor. The mansion was notorious for being haunted. They decided to enter, driven by curiosity and a dare. They pushed open the creaky front door and stepped inside. The foyer was dark and dusty, with cobwebs hanging from the ceiling. Old portraits stared at them from the walls. They moved into the living room, where a grand piano stood in one corner and a large, broken chandelier hung from the ceiling. Suddenly, the piano played a single, haunting note. Everyone froze in fear. Gathering their courage, they climbed the creaky staircase to the second floor. The hallway was long and dark, with several closed doors. They heard faint, eerie whispers, but couldn't tell where they were coming from. They opened one of the doors and found an old nursery. Dusty toys were scattered around, and a rocking chair in the corner started moving on its own. They heard a child's laughter echoing through the room. Panicked, they rushed downstairs and found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to investigate. The basement was even darker and colder. Strange symbols were drawn on the walls, and old furniture was strewn around. In the basement, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the ghostly figure of a woman in a tattered dress. Her hollow eyes stared at them as she whispered, "Leave this place." Screaming, they ran up the stairs and out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, and they could still hear the ghostly whispers. They vowed never to return to Blackwood Manor. Back at home, the friends sat together, still shaken by their experience. They knew they had encountered something truly terrifying and agreed never to speak of it again. On a dark, stormy night, 4 friends, Tom, Sarah, Mike, and Emma, stood at the gates of Blackwood Manor. The old house was rumored to be haunted, but they were determined to spend the night there as a dare. They pushed open the heavy front door, which groaned loudly. Inside, the house was dark and filled with dust. Old furniture covered in white sheets and cobwebs in every corner made the place look abandoned and eerie. In the living room, they saw a grand piano in the corner and a large broken chandelier hanging from the ceiling. Suddenly, the piano played a single, eerie note, causing everyone to jump in fright. They decided to explore the upstairs. The wooden stairs creaked under their weight. At the top, they found a long hallway with several closed doors. A cold breeze made them shiver, and they heard faint whispering. They opened one door and found a room filled with old, dusty toys. The air was freezing, and a rocking chair in the corner started moving by itself. They heard a child's laughter echoing around them. Panicking, they ran downstairs and found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to investigate. The basement was even colder and darker. They found strange symbols on the walls and old, broken furniture. In the basement, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the ghostly figure of a woman in a tattered dress. She stared at them with hollow eyes and whispered, "Leave this place." Screaming, they ran up the stairs and out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, and they could still hear the ghostly whispers. They vowed never to return to Blackwood Manor. Back at home, the friends sat together, still shaken by their experience. They knew they had encountered something truly terrifying, and agreed to never speak of it again.
In the dim light of dusk, a group of 4 friends, Emily, Jack, Sarah, and Mike, arrive at the gates of the old abandoned asylum. The air is thick with an eerie silence, and the massive, decaying building looms over them like a ghost from the past. The friends push open the creaking gate and make their way through the overgrown courtyard. They reach the main door, which hangs loosely on its hinges. As they enter, the smell of mold and decay fills their nostrils, and the floorboards creak under their feet. The hallway stretches out before them, dimly lit by the last rays of the setting sun, filtering through broken windows. Faded photographs and rusted medical equipment lie scattered on the floor. Emily picks up a dusty photo, her face paling as she sees ghostly figures in the background. Suddenly, a cold breeze rushes past them, and the sound of a distant whisper echoes through the corridor. Sarah gasps and points to a shadowy figure at the end of the hall. The figure vanishes as quickly as it appeared, leaving the friends in terrified silence. They decide to explore one of the rooms. Inside, they find rusty bed frames and torn mattresses. A wheelchair sits eerily in the corner. Jack approaches an old cracked mirror and sees a reflection that isn't his own, a ghostly patient in a hospital gown. Panic sets in, and the friends decide to leave. But as they rush towards the exit, the door slams shut with a deafening bang. In their confusion, they get separated. Emily and Jack find themselves in the basement, while Sarah and Mike are trapped upstairs. In the basement, Emily and Jack discover an old operating room with rusty surgical tools. The air is thick with the smell of decay. Suddenly, the lights flicker, and they see ghostly surgeons and patients moving around them, performing eerie, silent operations. Upstairs, Sarah and Mike stumble upon the asylum's records room. Dust-covered files and photographs lie scattered. As they search for a way out, the walls begin to close in, and ghostly hands reach out from the files, grabbing at them. Through sheer determination, the friends manage to reunite in the main hallway. Desperation gives them the strength to break down the door, and they stumble out into the night, gasping for fresh air. The asylum remains silent behind them, its secrets intact. Back in the safety of their homes, the friends can't shake the feeling of being watched. Each night they are haunted by nightmares of the asylum and the ghostly figures they encountered. The terror of that night remains etched in their minds forever.
On a dark, windy night, 4 friends, Tom, Alice, Sam, and Lucy, stood at the entrance of an old abandoned mansion on Hollow Hill. They were dared to spend the night inside the house, which was rumored to be haunted. They pushed open the heavy front door, which creaked loudly. Inside, The house was dark and filled with dust. Old furniture was covered in white sheets, and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. They entered the living room, where an old dusty couch sat under a large broken window. A grand piano stood in the corner, its keys covered in dust. Suddenly, the piano played a single eerie note, making them jump. They decided to explore upstairs. The wooden stairs creaked with each step. At the top, they found a long hallway with several closed doors. A cold breeze made them shiver as they heard a faint whispering sound. They opened one of the doors and found a room with old children's toys scattered on the floor. The air was freezing, and the rocking chair in the corner started to move on its own. They heard a child's laughter echoing around them. Panicked, they ran downstairs and found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to investigate. The basement was colder and darker, with a damp smell. They found strange symbols on the walls. In the basement, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the ghostly figure of a woman in a tattered dress. She looked at them with hollow eyes and whispered, "Leave this place." Screaming, they ran up the stairs and out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, and they could still hear the ghostly whispers. They vowed never to return to Hollow Hill. Back at home, the friends sat together, still shaken by their experience. They knew they had encountered something truly terrifying and agreed to never speak of it again. Lena, Mark, and Sarah arrived at Ravenwood House, an old, decrepit mansion that had been abandoned for years. The house stood at the end of a lonely road, surrounded by thick, twisted trees. They were there to investigate the rumored hauntings for their paranormal blog. "This place is giving me chills already," Sarah whispered, hugging her coat tighter. "Perfect for our blog," Mark replied, setting up his camera. "Let's capture some real scares." Lena pushed open the heavy wooden door, which creaked loudly. "Let's go in and set up. The sooner we start, the sooner we can leave." Inside, the house was dark and filled with the smell of mold and dust. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling, and old furniture was scattered about. As they explored, they found old portraits on the walls, books with yellowed pages, and broken trinkets. "Look at this," Mark said, picking up a dusty photograph of a family. "They must have lived here a long time ago." Lena shivered. "It feels like they're still watching us." Sarah glanced nervously at the dark corners. "Let's just get the footage and get out of here." Lena found an old leather-bound journal on a table covered in dust. She opened it carefully and started reading aloud. The journal belonged to the house's previous owner, detailing strange occurrences and sightings of a ghostly figure. "Listen to this," Lena said, her voice trembling. "The owner saw a woman in white every night standing by the window." Sarah hugged herself. "That's creepy. What happened to them?" Lena turned the pages. "It just stops. No explanation." Mark filmed Lena reading. "This is exactly what we need. Keep going." As they continued exploring, the temperature in the room suddenly dropped. They saw a figure in a white dress standing at the end of the hallway. The figure's face was obscured by shadows, but they could feel its eyes on them. "Do you see that?" Mark whispered, his camera shaking. "Yes," Sarah replied, her voice barely audible. "Let's get out of here." The figure started moving towards them. They ran, slamming a door behind them. "We have to leave," Sarah insisted, her eyes wide with fear. "Not yet," Lena said, determined. "We need to find out what's really happening here." Lena found another entry in the journal that described a ritual to banish the spirit. They needed to gather candles, salt, and a mirror. The tension was palpable as they worked quickly, knowing the spirit could return any moment. "Are you sure this will work?" Mark asked, placing candles around the room. "It has to," Lena replied, pouring salt in a circle. "We don't have any other choice." Sarah held the mirror, her hands shaking. "Just hurry." As they began the ritual, the spirit returned, more menacing than before. It howled and thrashed against the barrier created by the salt circle. Lena chanted the incantation from the journal, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Keep it away from us!" Sarah shouted, clutching the mirror tightly. "We're almost there!" Lena yelled, her focus unbroken. The spirit's form began to waver and dissolve as the ritual reached its climax. With a final, desperate scream, it vanished into thin air. They collapsed to the floor, exhausted but relieved. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by an eerie calm. "We did it," Lena said, her voice barely a whisper. Let's get out of here, Sarah urged, her eyes still wide with fear. They gathered their equipment and left the house, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. As they walked away, they felt a sense of triumph and relief. Let's never do this again, Mark said, managing a weak smile. As they walked away from the house, the sun rose higher, casting a warm glow over the landscape. The house behind them was now just a distant memory, a place they would never forget but never return to. Let's make a pact, Lena said, stopping to look at her friends. We never speak of this again. Agreed, Mark and Sarah said in unison. They walked on, leaving the haunted Ravenwood house behind, grateful to have survived their night of terror. Emma, a young writer in her late 20s, inherits an old mansion called Everwood Manor from her estranged aunt. Hoping to find inspiration for her next novel, she moves into the house. As she steps inside, she feels an unsettling chill. The house, surrounded by tall, dark trees, looks like it hasn't been lived in for years. Dust covers the furniture, and the air is thick with the scent of old wood and mildew. She feels a strange sense of foreboding, but brushes it off as nerves. On her first night, Emma struggles to sleep. The house is filled with strange noises, the creaking of floorboards, the whisper of the wind through cracks in the windows, and distant, indistinct whispers. She hears what sounds like footsteps outside her bedroom door, but when she checks, no one is there. She returns to bed, uneasy and sleep-deprived. The next day, while exploring the house, Emma discovers a locked door in the basement. Curious, she searches the house and finds an old rusty key hidden in a drawer. She uses the key to unlock the door and finds a small room filled with old furniture, cobwebs, and a large, ornate mirror covered with a cloth. Emma removes the cloth from the mirror and, to her shock, sees the reflection of a young girl standing behind her. When she turns around, no one is there. The mirror begins to show disturbing images of past events in the house, including a girl being trapped and crying for help. Emma feels a chill run down her spine. Determined to find out more, Emma searches the house and finds an old diary hidden behind a loose brick in the fireplace. The diary belonged to her aunt and details a tragic story of a girl named Lily who lived in the house and mysteriously disappeared. Emma realizes the ghost she saw is Lily, trapped in the mirror. Emma decides to perform a seance to communicate with Lily's spirit. She sets up candles and chants words from the diary. The room grows cold, and Lily's ghost appears, revealing that she was trapped by a dark ritual performed by Emma's aunt. Lily begs Emma to free her. Following Lily's instructions, Emma gathers the items needed to break the ritual: a locket, a piece of Lily's clothing, and a special incantation. As she performs the ritual, the house shakes violently, and a dark, malevolent spirit tries to stop her. Emma persists, chanting the incantation louder and louder. The dark spirit attacks, but Emma continues the ritual, calling out to Lily for strength. A bright light fills the room, and the dark spirit screams before dissipating into nothingness. Lily's spirit smiles gratefully at Emma before ascending into the light, finally freed. With the haunting over, the house feels lighter and more welcoming. Emma finishes her novel, inspired by Lily's story. She decides to keep Everwood Manor and transform it into a place of peace and creativity. Sitting on the porch, she feels a deep connection to the house and its history, ready for a new beginning. Julia and her husband, Mark, move into an old Victorian house in a small town. The house is beautiful, but has been vacant for years. As they unpack, Julia finds an old dusty mirror in the attic. She decides to clean it and hang it in their bedroom. That night, Julia wakes up to strange sounds, whispering and soft footsteps. She dismisses it as the house settling. However, when she looks into the mirror, she briefly sees a shadowy figure behind her before it vanishes. Disturbed by the experience, Julia visits the local library to research the house's history. She learns that a woman named Elizabeth lived there a century ago and mysteriously disappeared. Locals believe her spirit haunts the house. Julia becomes convinced that the mirror is connected to Elizabeth. That night, she sees Elizabeth's ghost in the mirror again. This time, the ghost seems to be trying to communicate, mouthing the words, "Help me." Julia tells Mark about her experiences. Skeptical but wanting to support her, Mark suggests they consult a paranormal expert. The expert tells them that Elizabeth's spirit is trapped and needs help to find peace. The expert instructs them to perform a ritual to release Elizabeth's spirit. They set up candles and the mirror in the living room. Julia reads a passage provided by the expert. The room grows cold, and Elizabeth's spirit appears. Elizabeth's spirit reveals that she was murdered by her jealous husband and her body hidden in the basement. Julia and Mark are horrified but determined to give Elizabeth justice. They find her remains in the basement, just as she described. They call the police, who properly lay Elizabeth's remains to rest. Afterward, the house feels lighter and the strange occurrences stop. Julia looks at the mirror one last time and sees Elizabeth smiling peacefully before fading away. Months later, Julia and Mark have settled into their now peaceful home. They keep the mirror as a reminder of Elizabeth and the mystery they solved together. Life returns to normal, but they never forget the ghostly presence that once haunted their home. On a foggy night, 4 friends, Jake, Emily, Noah, and Lisa, stood outside the iron gates of Redwood Manor. The mansion was infamous for being haunted, and they had decided to spend the night there as a dare. They pushed open the heavy front door, which groaned loudly. Inside, the house was dark and dusty. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling, and old portraits watched them from the walls. They moved into the living room, where a grand piano stood in one corner and a large, broken chandelier hung from the ceiling. Suddenly, the piano played a single, eerie note, making them all jump. They cautiously climbed the creaky staircase to the second floor. The hallway was long and dark, with several closed doors. A cold breeze made them shiver, and they heard faint, eerie whispers. They opened one door and found an old nursery. Dusty toys were scattered around, and a rocking chair in the corner started moving on its own. They heard a child's laughter echoing through the room. Panicked, they ran downstairs and found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to investigate. The basement was even darker and colder. Strange symbols were drawn on the walls, and old furniture was strewn around. In the basement, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the ghostly figure of a woman in a tattered dress. Her hollow eyes stared at them as she whispered, "Leave this place." Screaming, they ran up the stairs and out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, and they could still hear the ghostly whispers. They vowed never to return to Redwood Manor. Back at home, the friends sat together, still shaken by their experience. They knew they had encountered something truly terrifying and agreed never to speak of it again. In a remote corner of the countryside stands an imposing, abandoned mansion, its windows shattered and ivy creeping up the walls. A group of friends, Emma, Jack, Lily, and Max, dare each other to spend the night inside. As they approach, the moon casts eerie shadows on the decrepit facade. With trepidation, the friends push open the creaking front door and step into the mansion's foyer. The air inside is thick with dust, and the sound of their footsteps echoes through the empty halls. As they explore further, they feel an oppressive weight pressing down on them. Inside the mansion, they encounter rooms filled with decaying furniture and faded wallpaper. Strange symbols are etched into the walls, and the temperature drops noticeably as they explore deeper. A sense of unease settles over the group as they realize they are not alone. As they delve further into the mansion, they begin to hear faint whispers that seem to emanate from the very walls themselves. The whispers grow louder and more insistent, filling the air with an eerie chorus that sends shivers down their spines. Suddenly, a ghostly apparition materializes before them, a spectral figure with hollow eyes and tattered clothing. Its ethereal form glides towards them, its movements hauntingly graceful. Frozen with fear, they realize they are in the presence of something not of this world. With a collective scream, the friends turn and flee from the mansion, their hearts pounding with terror. They race through the dark halls, their breath ragged and their footsteps echoing off the walls. Behind them, the ghostly figure follows, its unearthly wails echoing in their ears. Exhausted and trembling, the friends emerge from the mansion, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They vow never to speak of their night in the haunted mansion again, haunted by the shadows that lurk within its walls.
On a chilly autumn night, 4 friends, Jake, Emily, Noah, and Lisa, stood at the gate of Ravenswood Manor. The old house was rumored to be haunted, but they were determined to spend the night inside to prove their bravery. They pushed open the creaky front door and stepped into the foyer. The air was musty, and the only light came from their flashlights. Dust-covered furniture and cobwebs filled the room, adding to the eerie atmosphere. They moved into the living room, where a grand piano stood in one corner, and an old tattered sofa sat under a large broken window. Suddenly, the piano played a single, eerie note, making everyone jump. They cautiously climbed the creaky staircase to the second floor. The hallway was long and dark, with several closed doors. A cold breeze made them shiver, and they heard faint, eerie whispers. They opened one door and found an old nursery. Dusty toys were scattered around, and a rocking chair in the corner started moving on its own. They heard a child's laughter echoing through the room. Panicking, they ran downstairs and found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to investigate. The basement was even darker and colder. Strange symbols were drawn on the walls, and old furniture was strewn around. In the basement, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the ghostly figure of a woman in a tattered dress. Her hollow eyes stared at them as she whispered, "Leave this place." Screaming, they ran up the stairs and out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, and they could still hear the ghostly whispers. They vowed never to return to Ravenswood Manor. Back at home, the friends sat together, still shaken by their experience. They knew they had encountered something truly terrifying and agreed never to speak of it again.
In a remote village nestled deep within a dense forest, a young couple, Emma and Jack, arrived at an old cabin they had rented for a weekend getaway. As they approached the cabin, the trees seemed to close in around them, casting long shadows that danced in the fading light. Despite the eerie atmosphere, Emma and Jack were excited for their adventure. Inside the cabin, the air was musty, and the furniture showed signs of age and neglect. Despite its rustic charm, there was an unsettling aura that permeated the space. Emma tried to shake off the feeling of unease, but Jack couldn't help but notice the strange symbols etched into the walls. As night fell, Emma and Jack decided to take a walk through the surrounding woods. The forest seemed to come alive with strange whispers that echoed through the trees, sending shivers down their spines. Despite their growing unease, they pressed on, drawn deeper into the darkness by an unseen force. As they ventured deeper into the woods, Emma and Jack began to see strange shadows flitting among the trees. The shapes seemed to twist and contort, taking on sinister forms that sent chills down their spines. Jack suggested they turn back, but Emma's curiosity got the better of her, and they pressed on. As they walked, the trees seemed to close in around them, their branches reaching out like grasping fingers. Emma's heart raced as she felt a growing sense of dread settle over her. Jack tried to reassure her, but even he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Suddenly they stumbled upon a clearing, and before them stood a group of ghostly figures. Their pale faces were twisted in agony, and their eyes seemed to bore into Emma and Jack's souls. Frozen with fear, they watched as the apparitions floated closer, their whispers growing louder with each passing moment. With a cry, Emma and Jack turned and ran, their hearts pounding in their chests as they fled through the forest. The ghostly figures pursued them with relentless determination, their whispers echoing in their ears. Desperate for escape, they pushed themselves to their limits, praying for a way out of the nightmare. Finally, they burst out of the woods and into the clearing where the cabin stood. Gasping for breath, they collapsed on the ground, their bodies trembling with exhaustion and fear. As the first light of dawn broke through the trees, they knew they had escaped the forest's clutches, but the memory of their terrifying ordeal would haunt them forever.
In the dead of night, a group of friends, Sarah, Mark, and Emily, arrive at the imposing Ravenswood Manor, a sprawling mansion nestled deep within the forest. The moon casts an eerie glow over the overgrown grounds as they approach the decrepit mansion, drawn by tales of its haunted past. As they step through the creaking front door, the group is enveloped by darkness. The air is thick with dust, and the floorboards groan beneath their feet. Sarah lights a lantern, casting flickering shadows on the walls as they explore the abandoned foyer. As they venture further into the mansion, they are greeted by the sound of whispers echoing through the hallways. The walls seem to close in around them, and Sarah's lantern flickers ominously. They exchange nervous glances, but press on, determined to uncover the secrets of Ravenswood Manor. In the heart of the mansion, they discover a forgotten library, its shelves lined with dusty tomes and ancient manuscripts. Emily's heart races as she picks up a weathered book, its pages filled with cryptic symbols and arcane rituals. Suddenly, a cold breeze fills the room, and the books on the shelves begin to sway as if moved by unseen hands. As they explore further, they come across a portrait hanging on the wall, a grim-faced man with piercing eyes that seem to follow their every move. Mark shudders as he gazes into the man's cold, lifeless eyes, and Sarah quickly averts her gaze, unable to shake the feeling of being watched. As night falls, the mansion comes alive with ghostly apparitions and otherworldly sounds. Emily's heart races as she catches a glimpse of a figure moving in the shadows, its form shifting and indistinct. She cries out in fear, and the others rush to her side, their lanterns casting shaky light on the empty hallway. As the night wears on, the group's sanity begins to fray. They are plagued by visions and nightmares, their minds filled with images of death and despair. Sarah clutches her head in agony as she hears voices whispering in the darkness, urging her to embrace the madness that lurks within Ravenswood Manor. In a desperate bid to escape the madness that grips them, the group confronts the malevolent force that haunts Ravenswood Manor. With trembling hands, they perform a ritual to banish the darkness, their voices raised in a desperate plea for salvation. And as the first light of dawn breaks through the windows, the mansion shudders and groans, the darkness receding into the shadows from whence it came. In the heart of the small town of Ravenswood, a young historian named Emily discovered an ancient, dusty manuscript in the basement of the local library. The manuscript, bound in dark leather, was covered in strange symbols and appeared to be centuries old. Emily's curiosity got the better of her, and she decided to take it home for further study. As she left the library, the old librarian, Mr. Finch, watched her with a worried expression. "Be careful with that book," he warned. "It's said to be cursed." Emily shrugged off his concerns. "It's just an old book. What harm could it do?" At home, Emily began to translate the manuscript. It told the story of a powerful sorcerer who had cursed the book to trap the souls of those who read it. As she read, strange things started happening. The room grew colder, and shadows seemed to move on their own. Emily's cat, Luna, hissed and arched her back, staring at an invisible presence. Ignoring the signs, Emily continued to read, her fascination growing. "I have to know more," she muttered to herself, her eyes glued to the ancient text. Late that night, Emily was awakened by a cold breeze and the feeling of being watched. She looked around her dark bedroom and saw a shadowy figure standing at the foot of her bed. It had hollow eyes and a twisted smile. "Who are you?" Emily whispered, her voice trembling. The figure didn't respond but began to move closer, its form flickering like a candle in the wind. Emily scrambled out of bed and turned on the light, but the figure vanished. Panting, she realized the curse was real. She needed help. The next day, Emily visited her friend Alex, who was an expert in the occult. She told him everything about the manuscript and the shadowy figure. "This is serious," Alex said, flipping through the manuscript. "You need to destroy this book before it's too late." Emily hesitated. "But it's an incredible find. There must be another way." Alex shook his head. "The longer you keep it, the stronger the curse will become. You don't understand the danger you're in." Emily reluctantly agreed. They decided to perform a ritual that night to break the curse. As night fell, Emily and Alex gathered the necessary items for the ritual: candles, salt, and an ancient incantation. They returned to Emily's house and set up in her study, drawing a protective circle on the floor. "Are you sure this will work?" Emily asked, placing the candles around the circle. "It has to," Alex replied, lighting the candles. "We don't have any other choice." Emily's hands trembled as she held the manuscript. "Let's do this." As they began the ritual, the temperature in the room plummeted. The shadowy figure reappeared, more menacing than before. It howled and thrashed against the barrier of the protective circle. "Keep chanting!" Alex yelled over the noise. Emily's voice wavered as she recited the incantation, but she kept going. The figure's form started to waver, and it let out a piercing scream. With one final burst of energy, it shattered into 1,000 pieces of darkness, vanishing completely. Panting, Emily and Alex looked at each other. "Is it over?" Emily asked. "I think so," Alex replied, his voice shaking. The room was eerily quiet after the spirit vanished. Emily knew what she had to do next. She took the manuscript and, with a heavy heart, threw it into the fireplace. The flames roared to life, consuming the ancient book. As the manuscript burned, Emily felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The curse was finally broken. "Thank you, Alex," she said, watching the flames. "We did it together," Alex replied. "Let's hope we never encounter anything like this again." In the days that followed, Emily's life returned to normal. The eerie occurrences stopped, and she was able to focus on her work again. She vowed to be more cautious with the ancient texts she studied. One evening, she and Alex met at a cafe to catch up. "How are you holding up?" Alex asked. "Better," Emily said with a smile. "I think I've had enough excitement for a lifetime." They laughed, but a part of Emily still wondered about the other secrets the world held. For now, though, she was content to leave them undiscovered. As Emily walked home from the cafe, she felt a chill in the air. She glanced around, suddenly uneasy. When she arrived at her apartment, she found a package waiting at her door. Curious, she opened it and gasped. Inside was another ancient manuscript, even older than the one she had destroyed. Attached was a note, "For your collection." Emily's heart raced. She looked around, but there was no one in sight. She knew this was far from over. Emily sat at her desk, staring at the new manuscript. She knew she should destroy it, but her curiosity was overwhelming. She reached out and opened the book, unable to resist. As she began to read, the room grew colder once again. Shadows crept along the walls, and a familiar sense of dread filled the air. The curse had returned, and this time, it was more powerful than ever. Emily was trapped in an endless cycle, forever bound to the cursed manuscripts. The haunting of Ravenswood was far from over.
Anna and her husband, Tom, arrive at Blackwood Manor, an old mansion they inherited from Anna's late uncle. The house is grand, but has been abandoned for years. As they explore, Anna finds a dusty old journal in the study. Curious, she decides to read it later. That night, Anna wakes up to strange noises, whispers, and faint footsteps. She dismisses it as the house settling. When she looks out the window, she sees a flickering light in the garden. She turns to wake Tom, but the light disappears when she looks back. The next day, Anna reads the journal. It belonged to her uncle, who wrote about a mysterious figure he saw in the house. The entries become more frantic, describing how the figure tormented him. His last entry warns about a hidden room in the attic. Determined to find the hidden room, Anna and Tom search the attic. They discover a concealed door behind some old furniture. Inside, they find an old nursery filled with dusty toys and a large, cracked mirror. In the mirror, Anna briefly sees a shadowy figure standing behind them. That night, the haunting intensifies. Anna sees the shadowy figure in the mirror again, now clearer and more menacing. The air grows cold, and she hears a chilling whisper saying, "Find my child." Terrified, she realizes the ghost is trying to communicate. Anna tells Tom about her experiences. They decide to seek help from a local historian. The historian tells them about the tragic history of Blackwood Manor, involving a woman named Eleanor, who lost her child and died in despair. Her spirit is believed to haunt the house. Following the historian's advice, Anna and Tom search the garden and find a small, unmarked grave hidden among the overgrowth. They realize it's the grave of Eleanor's child. They decide to perform a simple ritual to give the child a proper burial. Anna and Tom perform the ritual, laying flowers and saying a prayer. As they finish, they see Eleanor's ghost appear, looking peaceful. She silently thanks them before fading away. The air feels warmer, and the oppressive atmosphere lifts. With the ritual complete, the haunting stops. The house feels lighter and more welcoming. Anna and Tom decide to stay, feeling a deep connection to the house and its history. They keep the journal as a reminder of the past they helped lay to rest. Months later, Anna and Tom enjoy their peaceful home. They often think about Eleanor and the child, and are grateful for the experience that brought them closer together and helped them appreciate their new home. The memories of the past live on, but in a peaceful way. Briarwood Manor stood silent and foreboding at the end of a long, winding road. Jane, a young historian, arrived just as the sun was setting. She had heard stories about the mansion's dark past and was determined to uncover the truth. As she approached the front door, the wind howled and the trees whispered ominously. Jane pushed open the heavy wooden door, which creaked loudly. The interior was dark and filled with the smell of dust and decay. She turned on her flashlight, revealing a grand but dilapidated foyer. The once beautiful chandeliers hung broken, and the walls were lined with tattered wallpaper. In the main hallway, Jane's flashlight beam fell on a large portrait of a stern-looking man. The eyes seemed to follow her as she moved. She felt a shiver run down her spine. Suddenly, a cold breeze blew through the hallway, and the portrait's expression changed to one of anger. Jane discovered a hidden door behind a bookshelf in the library. She pushed it open to find a small, secret room. The room was filled with old, dusty books and strange artifacts. In the center of the room was a table with a large, leather-bound journal. She opened it and began to read. The journal belonged to William Briarwood, the original owner of the manor. It detailed dark rituals and a pact with a malevolent spirit to gain wealth and power. The final entry mentioned a curse that would doom anyone who lived in the house. Jane realized the manor was haunted by the spirits of those sacrificed in the rituals. As Jane read the journal, she heard whispers around her. Ghostly figures of the sacrificed appeared, their faces twisted in agony. They warned her to leave before it was too late. The temperature in the room dropped, and Jane could see her breath. She knew she had to get out. Rushing to leave, Jane encountered the malevolent spirit of William Briarwood himself. He appeared at the top of the grand staircase, his eyes glowing with an evil light. He blocked her path, his voice echoing through the manor, threatening her for disturbing his peace. Jane ran through the dark hallways, the spirit close behind her. She burst through the front door and into the night. The manor seemed to sigh as she left, the wind howling around her. She didn't stop running until she reached her car. As she drove away, she could still feel the spirit's eyes on her. Safe in her apartment, Jane reviewed the footage she had captured. The images of the spirits and the journal entries were clear evidence of the haunting. She knew she had to share the story, but a part of her feared the curse might follow her. She felt a cold draft and shivered, wondering if she was truly safe.
On a crisp autumn day, a group of friends arrives at a remote cabin nestled deep within the Whispering Woods. The leaves crunch beneath their feet as they unload their belongings from the car, eager for a weekend of hiking and relaxation. But as they glance into the dense forest surrounding the cabin, a sense of unease washes over them, as if the trees themselves are whispering secrets they dare not share. The friends set out on a hike through the Whispering Woods, following a narrow trail that winds through the dense foliage. The air is cool and fragrant, and the only sound is the gentle rustle of leaves overhead. But as they venture deeper into the forest, the whispers grow louder, like a chorus of voices urging them to turn back. As they hike, the friends stumble upon an abandoned cabin hidden deep in the woods. The windows are shattered, and the door hangs off its hinges. Intrigued, they decide to investigate, their curiosity outweighing their sense of caution. But as they step inside, they're greeted by an eerie silence that hangs heavy in the air. Inside the cabin, the friends find strange symbols scrawled on the walls and mysterious artifacts scattered about. A sense of unease washes over them as they realize they've stumbled upon something dark and sinister. They exchange nervous whispers, their voices echoing in the empty space. As night falls, the friends gather around a campfire outside the cabin, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames. But as they talk and laugh, they become aware of a strange sound, a soft whispering that seems to emanate from the very air around them. Their laughter fades, replaced by a growing sense of unease. That night, the friends are plagued by haunting dreams, visions of shadowy figures lurking in the darkness, their eyes glowing with malevolent intent. They toss and turn in their sleep, unable to escape the grip of fear that holds them tight. When they wake, they find themselves drenched in sweat, their hearts pounding in their chests. As the whispers grow louder and more insistent, the friends begin to unravel, their minds tormented by the malevolent voices that seem to follow them wherever they go. They argue and accuse one another, their once strong bonds fraying under the weight of paranoia and fear. But as they spiral further into madness, they realize they must confront the darkness that lurks within the Whispering Woods if they have any hope of escaping its grasp. Armed with determination, the friends set out into the forest, their hearts pounding in their chests as they confront the source of the whispers that have tormented them for so long. With each step, the voices grow louder until they're surrounded by a cacophony of sound that threatens to drive them mad. But as they reach the heart of the woods, they discover the truth. The whispers are not coming from some malevolent force, but from the very trees themselves, their branches swaying in the breeze like fingers beckoning them closer. With a newfound sense of understanding, the friends make their way out of the forest, their minds clearer than they've been in days. As they emerge into the light of day, they feel a weight lifted from their shoulders, knowing that they've faced their fears and emerged stronger for it. Though the Whispering Woods will always hold a certain mystique, they know they'll never again be haunted by the whispers that once tormented them. A narrow path winds its way into the heart of the dense forest, the trees towering overhead like ancient guardians. As the sun dips below the horizon, long shadows stretch across the forest floor, setting a sinister tone for what lies ahead. Within the depths of the forest lies a moonlit clearing, bathed in an ethereal glow. The towering trees encircle the space, their branches swaying in an unsettling silence. Wisps of fog creep along the ground, adding to the eerie atmosphere of the secluded grove. Amidst the darkness stands an abandoned cabin, its once sturdy structure now crumbling under the weight of neglect. Boarded-up windows and sagging roof shingles give it a desolate appearance, while the encroaching vines seem to reclaim it for nature. The air is heavy with a palpable sense of unease. The forest path twists and turns, disappearing into the inky darkness of the woods. Twisted roots snake across the forest floor, tripping hazards in the dim light. Above, the canopy creates eerie patterns of shadow and light, adding to the sense of disorientation and dread. Within the depths of the forest flows the Whispering Brook, its gentle waters shimmering in the pale moonlight. Overhanging branches sway in the night breeze, casting eerie shadows that dance upon the surface of the water. Despite its serene appearance, an underlying sense of unease lingers in the air. Deep within the forest lies a forgotten graveyard, its weathered tombstones bearing silent witness to the passage of time. Wisps of mist cling to the ground, shrouding the graves in an otherworldly haze. The air is thick with the weight of forgotten souls, their presence palpable in the stillness of the night. A decaying bridge stretches across a gaping chasm, its once sturdy structure now a maze of rusted metal and rotting wood. The sound of creaking echoes through the night as the bridge sways precariously in the breeze. Moonlight filters through the gaps, casting unsettling shadows upon the turbulent waters below. A grove of twisted trees stands in the heart of the forest, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. Wisps of fog weave between the trunks, and the air is thick with an oppressive silence. In the depths of the forest stands a forsaken well, its stone walls weathered by time and neglect. Moss and ivy cling. In the quiet countryside, shrouded in mist, stands the imposing Blackwood Manor, a mansion long abandoned and rumored to be haunted. A group of thrill-seekers, Alex, Lily, and James, arrive at the manor one moonlit night, drawn by its dark history. As they approach the manor, they are greeted by a heavy iron gate, its rusty bars twisted and warped with age. The gate creaks open ominously, as if welcoming them into its dark embrace. The group hesitates, but their curiosity pushes them forward. Inside the manor, the air is thick with dust and the scent of decay. The group explores room after room, their footsteps echoing off the empty walls. Shadows dance in the flickering candlelight, and strange whispers seem to follow them wherever they go. As they delve deeper into the manor, they uncover signs of its dark past. Forgotten diaries filled with tales of madness and despair, hidden passages leading to secret chambers, and portraits of long-dead residents whose eyes seem to follow their every move. As night falls, the manor comes alive with ghostly apparitions and sinister whispers. The group is plagued by visions of the past, echoes of tragedy and despair that seem to seep from the very walls themselves, threatening to consume them. In a desperate bid to escape the manor's grasp, The group races through its labyrinthine halls, their hearts pounding and their breath coming in ragged gasps. But the manor seems to have other plans, its corridors shifting and changing before their eyes, trapping them in a nightmarish maze. Cornered in the manor's dark heart, the group confronts the malevolent force that has plagued them since their arrival. With a final desperate act of defiance, they banish the entity back into the shadows from whence it came, freeing themselves from its grasp and escaping into the night.
In the outskirts of town lies an abandoned asylum, its once imposing structure now dilapidated and haunting. Four friends, Tom, Lisa, Ben, and Emily, arrive at the asylum, drawn by its eerie reputation. They stand before the decrepit building, its windows broken and its facade crumbling. Inside the asylum, the air is thick with dust and decay, and the walls are lined with peeling paint. The friends navigate the dark hallways, their footsteps echoing off the walls. Strange whispers seem to fill the air, sending shivers down their spines. As they explore further, they stumble upon an operating room, its equipment rusted and covered in cobwebs. The air is thick with the scent of antiseptic, and the faint sound of footsteps echoes through the room. The friends feel as though they are being watched, and a sense of dread washes over them. Suddenly, ghostly figures materialize before them, translucent apparitions with hollow eyes and outstretched hands. The spirits float through the air, their movements graceful yet unsettling. The friends watch in horror as the ghosts draw closer, their presence filling the room with a chilling aura. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, the friends turn and flee from the asylum, their hearts pounding with terror. They race through the dark corridors, their breath ragged and their footsteps echoing off the walls. Behind them, the ghostly apparitions follow, their unearthly wails growing fainter as the friends struggle to escape. Exhausted and trembling, the friends emerge from the asylum, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They collapse on the ground outside, their bodies shaking with adrenaline and fear. The moon hangs low in the sky, casting a soft glow over the abandoned building, a reminder of the darkness they have escaped.
In a quiet small town nestled among rolling hills, the last rays of the setting sun paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. Cozy houses line the streets, their windows glowing warmly against the encroaching darkness. But beneath the tranquil facade, whispers of something sinister linger in the air. On the outskirts of town stands an old abandoned house, its once grand facade now crumbling and decayed. Windows are boarded up, and the yard is overrun with weeds that seem to reach out like grasping fingers. Moonlight bathes the scene in an otherworldly glow, casting long, ominous shadows that seem to pulse with a life of their own. Inside the abandoned house, the living room is frozen in time, its once grandeur now a distant memory. Dusty furniture sits silent and still, draped in cobwebs that hang like gossamer threads from the ceiling. Moonlight filters weakly through cracks in the boarded-up windows, casting eerie patterns that dance upon the worn floorboards. Beyond the abandoned house stretches a dense forest, its twisted trees looming like silent sentinels in the darkness. Long, twisted shadows dance upon the forest floor, moving with an otherworldly grace. The air is thick with the sound of rustling leaves and the distant whispers that seem to echo through the trees, sending shivers down the spine of any who dare to venture within. In the kitchen of the abandoned house, decay holds sway, with peeling wallpaper and rusty appliances bearing witness to the passage of time. Moonlight filters weakly through grimy windows, casting eerie shadows that seem to writhe and twist upon the cracked linoleum floor, as if alive with some unseen presence. In the heart of the forest lies an ancient cemetery, its weathered headstones standing sentinel over the graves of generations long gone. Moonlight bathes the scene in an ethereal glow, casting shadows that seem to dance among the graves, whispering secrets of the past to any who will listen. Within the abandoned house, a desolate bedroom lies silent and still, its once cozy atmosphere now replaced by an oppressive sense of emptiness. A rotting bed frame stands as a silent sentinel against the decaying walls, while tattered curtains flutter in the breeze. Moonlight filters weakly through cracked windows, casting eerie shadows that seem to linger like phantoms in the night. A decrepit bridge spans a gaping chasm, its rusted metal groaning and creaking in the wind. Moonlight reflects off the murky waters below, casting eerie reflections on the moss-covered stones that line the riverbank. The air is heavy with the scent of decay, and a sense of foreboding hangs thick in the air. Deep within the bowels of the abandoned house lies the basement, a dark and musty chamber filled with cobwebs and decay. Moonlight filters weakly through a small barred window, casting eerie shadows that seem to dance upon the damp concrete floor like specters in the night. As dawn breaks, the town square is bathed in the soft light of a new day, casting long shadows that retreat before the encroaching sunlight. The darkness gives way to the promise of a new beginning, but the whispers of the shadows linger, a reminder of the horrors that lurk within the depths of the night.
The camera pans over a serene lake surrounded by towering trees. The water reflects the golden hues of the setting sun, creating a picturesque scene. But beneath the tranquil surface lies a sinister secret waiting to be uncovered. A group of friends arrives at a lakeside cabin for a weekend getaway. They laugh and joke as they unpack their bags, eager to unwind and enjoy the beauty of nature. As night falls, one of the friends, Emma, shares a local legend about the lake, a tale of a vengeful spirit haunting its waters, seeking revenge on anyone who dares to disturb its slumber. The group dismisses the legend as mere superstition. Strange occurrences plague the cabin, whispers in the night, unexplained shadows flickering in the corners, and cold drafts chilling the air. The friends brush off their unease, attributing it to the eerie atmosphere of the lake. Exploring the cabin, one of the friends, Jack, finds an old journal hidden beneath the floorboards. Its pages reveal the tragic history of the lake, a tale of betrayal and murder that has haunted its shores for centuries. The vengeful spirit of the lake manifests, its ghostly form stalking the friends with malicious intent. Terror grips their hearts as they realize they are being hunted by a force beyond their understanding. In a desperate bid for survival, the friends confront the vengeful spirit at the water's edge. Armed with courage and determination, they must uncover the truth behind the spirit's rage to break the curse that binds them. Through bravery and sacrifice, the friends uncover the truth behind the spirit's curse and lay it to rest. As dawn breaks, they emerge from the darkness, forever changed by their harrowing ordeal. Emily and her brother Jack inherit an old mansion from their estranged uncle. The house, nestled deep in the woods, is grand but eerily quiet. As they explore, Emily finds an old, ornate key in a dusty drawer. She keeps it, wondering what it might unlock. That night, Emily wakes up to the sound of whispers and faint footsteps. She dismisses it as her imagination. When she looks out the window, she sees a shadowy figure standing under a tree in the garden. She calls Jack, but the figure is gone when he arrives. The next day, Emily and Jack search for what the key might unlock. They find a hidden door behind a bookshelf in the study. The key fits perfectly, revealing a small room filled with old books, an antique mirror, and a diary. Emily reads the diary and learns it belonged to a woman named Margaret who lived in the mansion years ago. Margaret wrote about seeing a ghostly figure and hearing whispers. Her last entry hints at a hidden treasure in the house. That night, Emily sees the ghostly figure in the mirror. The figure, a woman in old-fashioned clothing, looks sad and mouths the words, "Help me." Terrified, Emily tells Jack, who becomes determined to help her. Emily and Jack search the house for clues about Margaret's hidden treasure. They find a series of letters behind a loose brick in the fireplace. The letters reveal that Margaret's child was taken from her, and she hid a valuable locket somewhere in the house to protect it. As they continue their search, the ghost becomes more active, appearing more frequently and growing more desperate. Emily and Jack follow clues to the attic, where they find a locked chest. The key fits perfectly. Inside the chest, they find Margaret's locket, along with a letter explaining her tragic story. Margaret's spirit appears, looking peaceful. She thanks them silently before fading away, her spirit finally at rest. With Margaret's spirit at rest, the house feels lighter. The whispers and apparitions stop. Emily and Jack decide to stay and restore the mansion, feeling a connection to its history and to Margaret. Months later, Emily and Jack enjoy their peaceful home. They often think about Margaret and the extraordinary events that brought them closer together. The mansion is no longer haunted, but the memories of the past live on in a peaceful way. Jonathan, a middle-aged man with a strained relationship with his family, receives a letter informing him of an inheritance from his late uncle. The inheritance includes a remote mansion in the countryside. Curious and financially strained, Jonathan decides to visit the mansion with his wife, Laura, and their teenage daughter, Megan. Laura looks worried. "Are you sure about this? We don't even know much about your uncle." Jonathan nods. "We need a fresh start, and maybe this place can offer that." Megan, always the adventurous one, says excitedly, "It'll be like an adventure." The family arrives at the mansion late in the afternoon. The mansion stands tall and imposing, surrounded by a dense forest. The air is thick with the scent of decay, and the atmosphere is eerily quiet. Megan shivers. This place feels off. Jonathan, trying to be positive, says, "It's just old. Let's see what's inside." Laura clutches Megan's hand. "Stay close, honey." Inside, the mansion is filled with dust and cobwebs. The furniture is covered with white sheets, and the air is musty. As they explore, Megan finds an old, ornate mirror in one of the rooms. The mirror's surface is strangely clean compared to the rest of the house. "Look at this mirror," Megan calls out. Laura touches the frame. "It's beautiful, but out of place here." Jonathan frowns. "Why is it so clean?" That night, the family tries to settle in. Jonathan and Laura fall asleep quickly, but Megan struggles. Around midnight, she hears faint whispers and feels a cold breeze. The mirror in her room begins to fog up, revealing words written from the inside. "Help us," it reads. Terrified, Megan runs to her parents' room. "Mom, Dad, there's something in the mirror." Jonathan, groggy, tries to comfort her. "It's just your imagination, Megan. Go back to sleep." The next day, the family visits the local library to learn more about the mansion. They discover that it was owned by Jonathan's uncle, who was a reclusive and eccentric man interested in the occult. Laura reads from an old newspaper. Local recluse found dead under mysterious circumstances. Mansion believed to be haunted. Jonathan sighs. "This explains a lot. We need to be careful." Megan, still shaken, adds, "What if the spirits are still here?" Back at the mansion, Jonathan discovers a hidden door in the basement. Inside, they find an old study filled with books on the occult, strange artifacts, and a large, locked chest. Laura examines a book. "He was really into dark stuff. This can't be good." Jonathan tries to open the chest, but fails. "We need to find the key. There might be answers inside." Megan points to a strange symbol on the wall. "I've seen this symbol before, in my room." That night, the hauntings escalate. Objects move on their own, and ghostly apparitions appear. Megan is dragged out of bed by an unseen force, and Laura sees a shadowy figure standing at the end of the hallway watching them. "We have to leave now," Laura screams, but the doors are locked and won't open. Jonathan grabs an old book from the study. "This book has instructions to banish the spirits. We need to perform the ritual." Desperate, the family gathers in the basement to perform the ritual. They light candles and arrange the symbols in a circle. Jonathan reads the incantation aloud, while Laura and Megan hold hands, trembling. As the ritual progresses, the house shakes, and the spirits grow more agitated. A blinding light fills the room, and the spirits are drawn into the circle, screaming. "Keep going, Jonathan!" Laura yells over the noise. With a final shout, Jonathan completes the incantation and the spirits vanish. The house falls silent. The next morning, the mansion feels different. The oppressive atmosphere is gone, and sunlight streams through the windows. The family packs up their belongings, relieved that the ordeal is over. "We should tell someone about this place," Laura says, looking back at the mansion. Jonathan nods. "Let's make sure no one else has to go through this." They drive away, leaving the mansion behind. Back home, life seems to return to normal. But one night, Megan finds the old mirror in her room, even though they left it at the mansion. Her heart races as she sees words slowly appear on the surface. "We are not done," it reads. Megan turns to see a shadowy figure standing in the corner, its eyes glowing with malevolence. She screams as the room plunges into darkness.